behind me, where you see the gold dome, at one point in time, that was called the Wonders of Life. It was a pavilion that was all about the human body and how the human body worked. And it had a movie in there that people really objected to. They took great offense to it, that people took umbrage with. And it was called The Making of Me. And it was a look at the biological cycle that produces life. And to be honest with you, it was never anything that was really offensive. There was nothing in it about anything that was about reproductive life. But people still took great offense to it because it broached the subject in some way. And this is Disney, and how could Disney do that? But it's interesting to look back in history and think about the way that worked, because this pavilion really was pretty unique in a sense, where it talked about the human body and different things about the human body that were unexpected in a way, because this is Epcot. And Epcot didn't have a lot of things that talked about the human body. We talked about our experiences, our imagination, living in different places and doing different things, but we didn't really talk about the physical selves. Well, maybe we did to a degree back when we had Communicore, and there was a couple of things in there where you could see how many joules you would use when you would ride a bicycle or things like that, but it didn't really talk about the human body in that sense. So there was an attraction in here called Body Wars that was kind of exciting. It used the same technology that Star Tours uses with a motion simulator and a screen, and that was kind of interesting, and I'll tell you about that too. But I wanted to take you back on a trip through what it was before it all closed down. Now today, it's totally closed off. You can't even go into it. But a few years ago, I had an opportunity to kind of wander back there when they were having a food and wine festival. And you could go through and you could kind of walk through the main part of the pavilion, even if you couldn't go back into any of the attractions or the show places. Ah yes, the Wonders of Life. The pavilion that came late to the party and left early. The one that kind of gets forgotten and lost to history to a large degree because people don't really remember it for what it was. The idea for a health and fitness sort of pavilion was on the original plan for Epcot. You think about what Epcot was and what it had. They had all manner of things that covered technology, space, the land, the seas, and even the imagination. But what they were missing was something about the human experience, more about what we were as humans and how we fit into this grand thing that we call Earth. So the idea for a health and fitness pavilion was on the table, but didn't get built right away. And the reason that it didn't get built right away was very simply that they couldn't find a sponsor. Remember that Epcot was hugely expensive to build, and they needed sponsors to cover the cost of building the attraction. And since they couldn't find one, well, they just put it on the back burner for a very long period of time, until October of 1989, which is a full 7 years after Epcot itself opened. So it took quite a while for Disney to negotiate with MetLife to become the sponsor. And while it's not really a stretch that MetLife, who provided insurance, would be the one who would sponsor an attraction about health and fitness, that sort of idea, it is kind of strange when you think about it that this company that used Snoopy as its mascot was now sponsoring something at Walt Disney World. The general concept for the pavilion had been laid out a long time before, but because it was sitting on the back burner, they had to figure out where to put it in the park. If you look at the original Epcot maps, there was no pavilion that looked like this on the maps anywhere. Now, it may have been there somewhere in a more subtle space, or may have actually been in a different location than they actually put it, but I was having trouble reconciling it with the original plan for Epcot. So where they decided to put it was between the Universe of Energy and Horizons. Now, as you may realize when you look at the map, there isn't that much space to put another big pavilion and have something going on there. So the Imagineers decided that what they would do is to move it back off of the main promenade and put it a little further back, and you had to walk up a pathway to get it. Now, as you're walking along the pathway near the Universe of Energy, you could see a gold dome off in the distance, but it wasn't clear what that pavilion was or why it was there. Yes, there was a marquee outside that said MetLife presents the Wonders of Life, but it wasn't clear that you had to walk up this pathway to get to this gold dome pavilion in order to get to the Wonders of Life. Now, people figured it out because it did have a marquee attraction, but it was kind of a weird thing because it wasn't really recognizable. People didn't really walk up to it and see it as something they really wanted to go to and enjoy and experience. The other thing was there was nothing out there, no weenie to draw people in. Typically, there would be something outside that would make it intriguing and engaging and somehow make it interesting for people to go into the pavilion. This one didn't really have that. Now, they did put a 75-foot sculpture that represented DNA on the outside of the pavilion, but you had to kind of look around the corner a little bit to see it. It wasn't as obvious as some of the other attractions and what they had out in front. And because it was just a gold dome, it didn't really represent the human body, it didn't really capture anything, it was not particularly imaginative in some ways. Now, if I'm being honest with you, I would say that this is my least favorite pavilion in all of Epcot. It lacked some style and substance and felt something like a carnival. As you'll see when we go inside, there's some things about it that you just kind of go, wow, it doesn't really feel like it has that strong pull. A lot of other pavilions that you went into felt like they really belonged and they really captured some spirit of imagination. This one didn't. And I really didn't like going into it for that reason. It's still memorable, don't get me wrong, and it was still a part of Epcot's history, but it just sort of lacked in some way. The gold dome represented the main part of the pavilion. Inside of it were a couple of things that you would see. And back behind it was a show building that housed the two attractions. Now, as you walked into the building through the automatic doors, you were a little bit above where the ground floor was, so you had to walk down a ramp to get there. This is similar to the ramp that they have in the Mexico Pavilion, where you walk in and you're actually walking down to go into the pavilion. The major difference is that in the Mexico Pavilion, you're entering into this marketplace. You have to kind of wind your way into the marketplace, and it's sort of a grand entrance to get you there because you have to go down the ramp on either side. It makes sense. In the Wonders of Life Pavilion, it doesn't exactly make sense. It doesn't really fit in some way. You have to walk down there, but there's really nothing that you're seeing that makes you want to engage with it in some way. So there in the main part of the building, there were a couple of exhibits and shows. First off was the Sensory Funhouse, which were a series of interactive kiosks about touch, sight, and sound that you could play with as you were walking through the pavilion. There was nothing about them that was really that interesting, but they were there so that you could kind of experience the idea of what the human body is like. There were some other assorted interactive exhibits that were put out in different places, and you could touch and feel those too. Then there was a show called Goofy About Health. This was a multi-screen presentation promoting health using clips from old Disney cartoons that featured Goofy. For some reason, Goofy became the de facto character that represented the Wonders of Life. I suppose it's because they had all this archival footage, these cartoons of Goofy doing different things where he was on a weight machine or he was running or he was doing whatever. So it made some sense, but it was just kind of a weird thing to have. And you just see this area with some screens up there. It was just Goofy cartoons right there. There was also a theater where they did the anatomical players. This was an improvisational area where they would do a comedy show all about the human body, about anatomy, and different things like that. The show was cute. It was definitely geared toward kids. It didn't really have anything that made you feel like it was really great, and you didn't really want to see it more than once, even though the show changed just a little bit from time to time. It had nothing that was compelling where you said, wow, this is great. I really want to sit here and watch this. Unfortunately. And it was sort of there in this almost carnival atmosphere that they had in the main round part of the building. It was just sort of weird the way they had it laid out. You had these exhibits that were just sort of freestanding in the space, and then you had these little theaters that were really open air theaters that faced into the atrium. It felt kind of like maybe when you'd go to see Santa in the mall in the 1990s or early 2000s, kind of the way that felt. You know, you're going into a mall and you're seeing this giant space where there's all these things happening and there's nothing really interesting going on other than maybe the one or two things you wanted to see. As far as shopping in the pavilion, there was one shop called the Well & Goods Limited. It was a gift shop that sold some Goofy-related merchandise, some other Disney-related things, and a few things about health and wellness and things like that were supposed to kind of capture the imagination. But as you can imagine, it was a little bit limited, and MetLife sold some of their merchandise there as well. There was also a quick service dining establishment there called Pure and Simple. It was a healthy sort of restaurant that served some different foods that were supposed to be health conscious. The idea was good. I know I ate there, but I don't remember what I had, and it made no impression on me other than that, which is kind of a strange thing in a way. Now, the main reason that people went to this pavilion in the first place was for the three marquee attractions. The first was called The Making of Me. It was a film that answered the age-old question, where do babies come from? The movie theater for it was kind of in the middle of the atrium. So you would walk around and you would go into this theater, and it was kind of a smallish theater. Maybe it seated 40 or 50 people, and you would watch this film.
How did I get here? What's it like being born? Me? I started here. Not now. 60 years ago, actually. That's my dad. Or will be. That's my mom. Or at least she's good at me. One special cell can
make a baby. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Who knows, maybe by now, Mom and Dad have actually run into each other.
Now, I would argue that this was suitable for all ages. It was sort of the Birds and the Bees meets Disney. I don't think there was anything particularly controversial about this, but yet, it created a firestorm at that time.
Well, getting the sperm and the egg together is one of the great miracles of life. It's also one of those things that people like to do in private. I mean, most people don't even like to talk about it. It makes them nervous. Some people laugh, others tell jokes. Lots of people just avoid the subject altogether.
Late 1980s, people had their things and their hang-ups about teaching anything related to procreation. They wrote it in a way that was very family-friendly. Martin Short's role in it was kind of funny. When you think of Martin Short in a more recent thing, like There's Only Murders in the Building, Martin Short is still that same sort of person. Yes, he's a little more exaggerated in the current show, but in this movie, he had this humorous way of kind of looking at things, but then sitting down and talking to you in a little bit more matter-of-fact way to tell you some details. I thought it was really well done. It did give you that sort of perspective. Mom meets dad, they fall in love, they procreate, the sperm fertilizes the egg, and the baby is born. That's really it. That's what the whole story was about. Now, in the cartoon section where they showed the sperm racing down to get to the egg, maybe that's a little over the top and a little silly, but otherwise I thought they did a pretty good job of representing this. The second marquee attraction was definitely my favorite attraction in this pavilion and was definitely in my top couple in Epcot and probably throughout most of Walt Disney World in my top 10. It was just so creative and innovative, and it was a lot of fun. And it was called Cranium Command, and it was kind of a fun show about the functions of the human brain. You start off by learning a little bit about the human brain.
All right, you pitiful submitted sad sacks, eyes front and listen up. I'm your commanding officer, General Knowledge, and it's my job to turn you mealy-mouthed meatheads into a crack squadron of Cranium Commandos. Your job, if you can cut it, will be to run the most sophisticated information system ever devised, the human brain. This is your brain. You will eat with it, sleep with it. You will never leave it. Without you, the brain is nothing. Without your brain, you are nothing. It took 3 billion years of research and development to make this lean, mean thinking machine what it is today. In those years, we've had some successes and some failures. And if you meatballs can't fly right, you'll wind up piloting one of these. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, sir.
I can't hear you.
Yes, sir.
It's better. The brain is divided into two halves, the right and the left.
Pardon me, excuse me, sorry.
You!
Me, sir?
No, your mama. Yes, you. Get up here on the double. Move it. What's your name, recruit?
Buzzy, sir.
You think you're ready to pilot a brain, Fuzzy?
That's Buzzy, sir. Oh, yes, you just let me in that control
Do
panel.
you know that the brain can process up to 3 million bytes of information per second?
Why, you
I don't think you've got the spoiled lot of dim bulb freak hair. I don't think you understand the amount of concentration and commitment it takes to run this lovely unit. The brain is divided into two halves. Your left brain handles the linear thinking, analysis, logic. The right brain is the creative center, home of the emotions and imagination. On the command seat here in the cortex, you'll run the whole shebang. Any questions? No? Good. All right, you chickens, this is it. Let's scramble on the double. Move it, move it.
And then you get introduced to Buzzy, who's going to pilot a brain, and the brain he gets put into is a 12-year-old boy. So you get sort of the 12-year-old boy misadventures from the perspective of the brain. He doesn't eat enough, he has a wide emotional range, he meets a girl, all of these things happen. And it comes together in kind of a fun way. It really is entertaining, and it's kind of enjoyable to a large degree.
Some genius at HQ has picked you to pilot the most unstable craft in the fleet.
You don't mean...
You guessed it, Stinky. An adolescent boy.
I really like this show just because of the humor of it all. The way that they played it out, they started off with a cartoon, then you go into a room and you're actually sitting there watching through the boy's eyes while Buzzy moves around as an audio animatronic and controls everything. Then you have the different organs, each of which is played by an actor who was popular at that time. It's very, very cute and clever, and some of the lines are extremely memorable and quotable.
Good morning, guys.
Morning, Captain. Left brain reporting for duty, sir. Logic circuits working at full capacity. Let's have a safe and sane day, shall we?
Roger, left brain.
Right brain here, bud. Free association and creativity banks fully charged.
Roger, two.
Harvey Body copy. Left back recording. Right back return. We are on and call base.
The gentleman's reporting, Captain.
some of those gold pizza crusts from last night and keep us, you know.
Mommy, aren't you up yet? The bus. He's getting away! Quick, take a shortcut!
Planning an alternate route to school, sir.
I'll measure you next.
Careful, careful. Some of these compounds are not entirely stable. See? You put us in an explosive situation.
I've never had it work this hard in my life.
I suppose you'll be wanting reflex dot.
Listen to us now and believe us later. If we were 30 years older, we'd be attacking you right now. Yeah, if we lived that long.
All right, Captain. We can't take much more of this. I'm gonna have to send some back up.
No, don't! I might as well say goodbye now, sir. They're gonna burn us at the stake and send our ashes to Siberia.
Nonsense thinking. You're just worrying yourself sick. Real stress or imagined stress, it doesn't matter means to your body crew. They can't tell the difference. Only you can. Take charge, look ahead. Be calm, cool, collected, serene, balanced, centered, and relaxed like me.
Just keep cool, guys, and stand by for instructions. Come full bow. Hi, Bobby.
I don't need one. I'm going into politics.
In politics. So long, Pussy. Keep up the good work.
Let's hear it for Captain Bunny.
So remember, gang, if you get stressed out, just call in your general knowledge. Balance your body crew and get your cranium under command. Use your head, don't lose your head. It's easy. You'll be flying in no time.
I have to tell you, there was one story after the pavilion closed that the Cranium Command stayed intact exactly like it was for many years. And then one day, Buzzy went missing. And there was a whole thing about people thinking that an urban explorer had stolen it or something happened. But if you think about this very heavy audio animatronic and how they had to get it out of there, so it's much more likely that some Imagineers removed it for some reason, and that was the end of that. But the stories make it kind of fun and give it sort of a charm in a way. Because what happened to Buzzy? And then finally, the last attraction was the first thrill ride to come to Epcot. It was called Body Wars. It was a simulator attraction where you would go into a room and you would actually sit and watch the screen in front of you while the simulator would move around in accordance with what was going on the screen. Now, Disney had already pioneered this sort of technology in Star Tours in Disneyland. They hadn't built it at Walt Disney World yet at the Disney MGM Studios, but they were working on it. And I believe that Body Wars opened about a year and a half to 2 years before the Star Tours attraction opened at Walt Disney World. So kind of interesting that it predated it, but it was basically the same ride technology that they used. Now this one also put two well-known stars into the attraction. It was Tim Matheson, who was your pilot, and Elizabeth Shue, who to that point her claim to fame was Adventures in Babysitting, as the doctor who was already inside the human body, who you were going to pick up and return back to normal size. Now there's kind of a funny side note about this particular attraction, and it's that the premise is that they were going to shrink you down to the size of a cell and inject you into a patient's arm so that you could actually go and pick up the doctor who was looking at a splinter in someone's finger. And this concept had already been done in movies through a movie called Fantastic Voyage that starred Raquel Welch. And this was in the 1960s. So the concept was kind of based loosely on that idea, even though Disney never talked about it as being the concept. Clearly they were inspired in some way to make this happen. And even when you look at the ship and sort of what happens, you can see there's some inspiration drawn from the movie. Anyway, they bring you in, they tell you all about what you're going to do, what your mission is going to be.
Here, you see the body's white blood cells being mobilized to attack invading bacteria. With miniaturization, it is now possible to go into the body aboard vehicles like this and actually witness immune system activities firsthand.
The subject has been thoroughly prepped and tested. Of course, he will feel nothing during the mission because the program in his arm is approximately the size of a single human cell. One.
This is Dr. Cynthia Lair, one of our foremost immunologists. 10 minutes ago, she was miniaturized and beamed to the site of a splinter in the right index finger of a volunteer. Her objective is to conduct tests on the immune system's response to that splinter. Dr. Lair, this is Mission Control. Your recovery team is with me. Can you tell us how your experiment has been going?
Fantastic. The mission has been a complete success.
Can you give our observers a brief description of your objectives?
Sure. I'm here to study the inflammatory response of the neutrophils as they react to invading bacteria.
In layman's terms, please, Dr. Lair.
Simply speaking, I'm here to observe the speed and effectiveness of the white blood cells as they rush to protect the body from infection.
Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Braddock. I'm glad you'll be joining me aboard Bravo 229er.
When the probe doors have opened, please proceed directly into the vehicle and all the way across your aisle, filling in every available seat. For your protection, all observation team members are required to wear safety restraints throughout the mission.
And you go to find Dr. Laird, but then something happens. The body is fighting off this infection, and she gets swept away with white blood cells, and you have to go chase after her. And then you finally catch her, and you get her back, and you bring her back in the ship, but you don't have enough energy to be able to beam back out and go back to full size.
Standing by.
We're gathering a lot of valuable information here. I hope that... Mayday!
Dr. Lair, are you okay?
Mayday! I'm being pulled into a capillary.
Hang on, I'm coming in.
So they have to figure out a way out. And that's when they decide that they're going to take you into the human brain, and they're going to wait for an electrical pulse to happen in the brain.
I'm in!
Control, I've got Dr. Lair.
Braddock, you use too much power. You can't speed out.
We need an energy boost.
The brain. It works on electrical impulse.
How do we get there?
Through that capillary.
Braddock, your power is decreased to 5%. 5%.
I'm going to use the heartbeat to propel us lightning round.
Braddock, your power is gone. We can't get you out. Speak. Your power is gone.
This neuron better fire.
The shield. The shield.
You have power. We did it. We're beaming you out.
Incredible! Do you realize what we just did?
I'll tell you what you did. You broke every regulation in the book.
Control, we were the first to go through the heart, lungs, and brain.
You also managed to pull off the most spectacular mission this place has ever seen. Congratulations.
Thank you, Control.
Now I have to say that while I could manage to do Star Tours, I only did this attraction once. And the reason is it was a very jerky motion that made me very, very uncomfortable. And apparently now that I read about it on the internet, I was not the only one who felt that way. There was a lot of sudden motions that made a lot of people motion sick. And there was something about the way it was oriented with the screen that seemed a little bit out of sync that just disoriented people a lot. But anyway, the storyline was pretty cute, very clever, and there was a lot of interesting things that happened there. But as you might guess, this storyline got a little stale over time. While Star Tours still captured the imagination of being a Star Wars-themed ride, this one kind of got lost to history a little bit because it wasn't that interesting to go inside the human body, unlike going through something for Star Wars, which was really, really exciting. Even so, Star Tours had to update more recently to kind of become something a little more, to make it a little more current and make it a little more interesting and have some randomization rather than always being the same trip to Endor. I don't know how they would have done that with Body Wars because you really have to tell a story that makes sense in some way, and there's only so many human body stories you can tell that would make sense with this miniaturization. So it was interesting, but I don't know that it would have been long-lasting in any case. It just didn't have any staying power. I guess that's what I'm saying. I will also tell you that one of the coolest things was there was a mural outside of Body Wars. On the inside of the pavilion, up on the wall, there was a mural. And the mural sort of depicted the human body to a large degree, a little bit whimsically in some ways, but it was really, really cool. And there was a really fun hidden Mickey that was hidden off to the left-hand side, up in the little green section there, where it was supposed to be like ganglia or something, and they called it Broccoli Mickey, because this particular mouse sort of looked like he was hanging off of a bit of broccoli. It was a really cool thing to see when you looked at it, because it was just such an imaginative way to put a hidden Mickey outside of Body Wars. Of course, in recent years, they painted over it. When I went back in at some point, you realize that it's gone. It's no longer there, and that's kind of sad in its own way. Along the way, MetLife didn't see the return on their investment. They enjoyed the relationship with Disney, but they really didn't see any return where people were identifying with their products, so they decided to end their sponsorship in 2007. And that meant that the pavilion would be unsponsored. Disney decided that rather than leave it unsponsored, they'd look for another sponsor and just close it temporarily. But they never found another sponsor, and it stayed closed permanently. They did use it for some period of time, between 2007 and 2018, as a festival space. They used it as a festival space because they put tables out, do cooking demonstrations, have food and wine things there, have merchandise shops and different things that they would do. It worked out okay for that period of time, but it really didn't fit otherwise. There was nothing else they did with the pavilion, and now it's kind of fallen into disrepair, and they don't use it anymore. At some point, they had talked about making it a play pavilion and making it all about Disney play type things and interactive type of space that they would use. But then when COVID came along and they had the shutdown, they scrapped the plans, and we haven't heard anything else about it since then. So now, this pavilion you can see off in the distance when you walk by, this gold-colored dome, is kind of a lost thing to history. As I said, it wasn't my favorite pavilion anyway, so maybe it's no loss to a degree, but yet we lost a piece of history that Disney had planned to put in, and it's another thing that Epcot had that no longer exists. I think I got everything.